I haven't really been feeling well lately, and thus I haven't really uploaded to World of Geekdom for quite some time. I've just been very focused on other projects, and I'm, working on other things, in my personal life and my professional life. But rest assured, I have not given up on the channel or anything like that. I'm still going to be doing uploads when time permits. And I wanted to do this video here, about this rumor going around that was started by, I guess, Victor Von Doomcock, and it spread to a lot of different channels, and that is that Disney is considering decanonizing the sequel trilogy. In other words, they are considering erasing Episode 7, The Force Awakens, Episode 8, The Last Jedi, and Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker from canon and making them sort of an alternate timeline. Of course, this is all being based on the fact that these films, did not resonate well with the audience. They didn't really set much up for the future, and because overall audience disapproval has come from this trilogy because of the lack of direction, there have been talks that right now within Lucasfilm there's kind of a split, or within Disney, there's like a split, like there's two factions that are kind of like politically going at each other. The Kathleen Kennedy faction, and then the George Lucas faction. Now, the thing about all that is that all may well be true. Like, a lot of times within these big companies, you have different sort of pocket groups that come together and they play politics with the bigger bosses. This happens actually quite often in the movie business and also in the entertainment business overall. And so people always want to like play politics and kind of pull their weight around and use their stroke to get their story told, to get what they feel should be their representation of the story told, and to get their message across, while also in some ways also wanting to push their agenda. That's just always how it is. And sometimes people will take sides. And the George Lucas side supposedly is wanting to decanonize the mistake of the sequel trilogy and kind of focus on different stories after Return of the Jedi. And then the Kathleen Kennedy side, this is again what the rumors state, and of course I'm summarizing, I'm not going into explicit detail on everything. They want to keep the sequel trilogy, and they want to keep sort of the story that they establish and the identity politics, I'm using that in air quotes, that these movies had sort of said. Now again, that's not really what I'm here to talk about, because it's not really about the political aspect of it, but what I want to talk about is more so my opinion on this, how they supposedly plan to do it, and why I think ultimately it's not going to happen, even though there's a possibility it will. Now, the thing about decanonizing the sequel trilogy, right, is that the reason... Okay, first of all, let me explain to y'all what the supposed canon explanation is going to be, based on the rumors. So the rumor is that, based on what happened in Rebel Season 4... So Rebel Season 4 introduced something called the Veil of the Force, right? The world between worlds. And the world between worlds is basically a part of the Force, like an alternate dimension where all of time and space meet. So you've got different timelines, different time periods all happening at once. And through the Veil of the Force, you can access different parts of the timeline and really use that. Palpatine wanted to use that to kind of gain a version of immortality, right? So the idea is that at some point in the timeline, they're going to explain that as Palpatine was falling when Vader threw him down the shaft, he teleported his body into the world between worlds and created this alternate timeline that became The Force Awakens and so on and so forth, and that Disney was going to sort of ignore the sequel trilogy from now on and sort of leave it to this sort of alternate what-if storyline, kind of shift it into legend stories. And that all sounds good, and a lot of Star Wars fans who hate that trilogy, who hate what Rian Johnson did, what Abrams did, what Kathleen Kennedy did, they hate the lack of direction, they're excited because they think that this is going to somehow invalidate the existence of those movies, and somehow, and some actually think it could reverse the damage that was done. I'm not so sure about that. Now, I was one of the first guys on this platform, one of the first guys to talk trash about The Last Jedi. I loved Force Awakens, loved what it set up, hated The Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker was not very good either. But I was one of the first dudes, before the Fandom Menace and all these guys kind of came along, I was trashing that movie. And I'm not saying I was the first guy or the only guy, but everybody kind of had their own opinions, and I was among them. So I'm not in any way in favor of these films. I'm not. And the lack of direction with these movies has been a problem. We all agree on that. Even the people who like Last Jedi, who hate Rise of Skywalker, who like all three, everyone's pretty much admitted that the lack of direction with that trilogy is what hurt the story. And the story feels very unbalanced and just very, very wrong. But this idea of Disney decanonizing these films, there's a couple things I want to talk about. First of all, yes, this is just a rumor that Victor von Doomcock reported, and he's even saying that it's a rumor, that he's not sure. And, you kind of have to say that when you report something that you're not sure, unless you're sure. And even when you're sure, plans can change. And this is not in any way saying that he is purposely being misleading, because I don't think that he's purposely being misleading necessarily. I don't know the guy. I've never spoken to him before. I'm not sure how close his sources are, but I just find it very hard to swallow that Disney will do that, and I'll explain to you why. Number one, as much as I dislike the sequel trilogy, as much as many of you might dislike these movies, they made a lot of money. Force Awakens made $2 billion, then each one of them made a little bit less than that, but they all made, over $1 billion. These films made a ton of money, and yes, their merchandise may have been hurt, and other aspects of Star Wars may have been hurt, but they have put a lot into the sequel trilogy, not just with the movies, but also the Star Wars Battlefront storyline, also with the stories in the books that have come out about the sequel trilogy, the Phasma book, the Legend of Luke Skywalker book, and that's just a couple, the comic books, the Poe Dameron novel, there's a lot more to the sequel trilogy than just 3 movies, right? That sequel trilogy era, like Star Wars Resistance, all of that stuff encapsulates the Disney Star Wars post Return of the Jedi storyline. So for them to decanonize it by using the World Between Worlds would erase not just those 3 movies from canon, but also everything else. And the reason why I find this hard to believe is because for Disney to do that, it would be Disney showing an admittance of failure. It would be Disney admitting to the world, we screwed up, we did wrong. And the problem is that Disney very rarely, if ever, does anything like that. Disney's the kind of company, if you've been following their history, to just sort of sweep things under the rug and not really take accountability for their mistakes. Now, there's obviously a lot of politics going on behind the scenes with Kathy Kennedy and her team, and that all of that may be true, and that might be leading somewhere, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with Disney, who's the parent company, and Disney has invested so much money into buying Star Wars and making this sequel trilogy that for them to just come along and say, you know what, that's not canon anymore, even though, again, they certainly could do that because they own the property, for them to say that, it's going to create this sort of ripple effect to where Disney will be heavily criticized by those who like the sequel trilogy and those who worked on the sequel trilogy. People who worked on it are going to say, well, damn, so all the work we did doesn't mean anything to you? And there's something called ego. Disney and people who work for Disney all have egos, and as a human being who has an ego, you don't want to see the work you put into something just get flushed away. And you don't want to see people within the company don't want to see them give in to fan pressure. Yes, the fans really did dislike the sequel trilogy. I'm one of them. I'm in that same boat. But the idea of Disney actually saying, you know what, these movies are no longer canon anymore, the idea of that happening to me just doesn't seem realistic. I don't see Disney ever coming out and doing that because, like I said, that would be them admitting that they were wrong, and it's just not something that they would do. And again, it could be one of those things where maybe after Kennedy is gone, maybe after she's no longer with Lucasfilm, the likelihood of this happening is going to increase tremendously if the rumor is true that her faction is trying to stop it from happening. But I still don't see that being the case because Disney has put way too much equity in the sequel trilogy. Are there plot holes? Yes. Are there constant retcons to where it's actually kind of ridiculous and people who don't read the comics and keep up with the hardcore lore get lost? Absolutely. Are there bad storyline plots and bad character arcs? Yes. Everything was poorly planned. No argument on that. But even with all that being said, with the sequel trilogy being over, where could they possibly go from here? I mean, they could go on and do what happens after. They could do something else. But I find it very hard to believe that Disney would actually sit there and willingly decanonize these movies. And here's the other question. Here's the other big question to people out there. Let's say they do decanonize these movies. Let's say they actually do come up with a way to make these movies the alternate storyline, right? is that really going to erase these movies from ever actually happening? Disney's going to constantly sell the 9-episode saga, not the 6-episode George Lucas canon, the 9-episode Star Wars saga as the Skywalker saga. They're going to release 9 Blu-ray or 4K sets, 9 box or 9 movie sets. They're going to release, the sequel trilogy together in a pack. Is that really going to erase these movies from existing? No. These movies are way too big and will forever be remembered, right? No matter what they are, they only had one chance. One chance at making Star Wars Episode 7, Episode 8, and Episode 9. One chance. You can't just go back and just erase a movie from existing. So that's the first aspect of it. The second aspect of it is, if they do decanonize it, is it really going to matter or make you feel better about it? And the reason why I'm saying that is because, look, at the end of the day, we're never going to see Han, Luke, and Leia on screen ever again. We're never going to see that because of the fact that Carrie Fisher passed away and because Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill are both aging, and I doubt either one ever wants to do Star Wars again, especially after this whole thing. So I feel like that's something that's just not going to happen, and something that, even if it does happen again, is it really going to change things? The reality is that Carrie Fisher's last performance while being alive was in Last Jedi, and then they took some footage from that in Force Awakens, and they kind of recontextualized it for Rise of Skywalker, so she was able to live on for one more film, which is great because Carrie Fisher and J.J. Abrams are very close, and we all love Carrie, and it was a nice idea in theory, even though the execution was kind of meh. But at the end of the day, Carrie Fisher is no longer with us. So we're never going to get that real sequel trilogy, that continuing adventure of Luke, Han, and Leia that we all want. We're not going to get that unless it's in a novel, a video game, or if what they could do is do an animated featurette. See, people were asking, would they ever remake 7, 8, and 9? They're not going to do that. 7, 8, and 9 are part of Disney's canon. Now, whether or not you want to erase Disney's canon from your personal canon, that's on you. Look, as far as I go, the George Lucas canon is my personal canon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't even care about 7, 8, and 9, right? That's the way I go, and every fan out there has a right to watch whatever they want to watch. If you only want to watch the old trilogy, the prequels, that's up to you. You don't have to watch Clone Wars. You are an independent person, right? So for Disney to just officially say that, it would be an admittance of defeat, and it would be them admitting that these movies are valued less, and that's going to end up hurting people who worked on these films. And also, is it really going to make the rest of the world just feel better about it? Because what's going to happen if Disney makes another movie and it just winds up being a stinker? Like, this might not necessarily fix the core problem here, and that is that Star Wars needs direction. That's the core problem. And at the end of the day, right, a lot of us are going to be forever pissed off at the fact that Disney had Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Billy D. Williams, and Carrie Fisher at one time together alive in 2015 and chose to do nothing with it or not do what we wanted. At the end of the day, fans are always going to feel that way. And we can't reverse that because, like I said, Carrie's gone. You can't just redo that. If they made an animated, new sequel trilogy or an animated saga of the new canon post Return of the Jedi, you could have a voice actress come in to play Carrie Fisher or play Princess Leia. I mean, they have Mark Hamill come back and play Luke without even having to go on a soundstage, just do voiceover. I mean, he's done the Joker for years. Should be easy for him. These kind of things are possible, but the idea of decanonizing Star Wars Episode 7, 8, and 9 might seem like a good idea to some, but is it really going to change things? Is it really going to reverse the way we felt about these films? Is it going to give the fans a sense of victory? Well, maybe. And should Disney be forgiven for their mistakes? Possibly, depending on what they do with it. But, Victor Von Doomcock was kind of saying that we should forgive Disney for at least trying and acknowledging that they screwed up. And I do agree with him in that if they acknowledge that they screwed up, yes, I definitely think they should be given another chance, but will they be given another chance? And the reality is, too, that I don't think Disney gives a damn about this. I don't think Disney cares enough about the vocal minority to do this. I don't think they care because at the end of the day, their bottom line is these movies made a lot of money, point blank. And they have all these articles and all these, reviewers who fap off these films. And at the end of the day, the whole thing wound up being a big disaster, but they're going to get their validation no matter what. Disney has a way of sort of self-validating themselves to where they don't have to wipe anything away. See what I'm saying? Like, what would that really accomplish? You know, getting some fans back? Well, some of those fans might not come back anyways. So you have to think about it like this, all right? To wrap this up, think about it like this, okay? Does Disney, the company who has been very passive-aggressive towards its fans since Last Jedi, this company that has literally labeled some of their fans incels and women haters and racists because they did not like The Last Jedi's direction, is this company really going to succumb to these fans and decanonize all the work that they did in marketing these last 3 films? Are they going to erase the marketing they put behind all of this just to please some fans? It just doesn't make sense to me. You know, this company is so like squeaky clean. We never mess up. It is not the Disney way to ever do something like this. Is it the right thing to do? Maybe. But at the end of the day, I personally feel like it's too little too late. I feel like no matter what, they're never going to have another shot at making a good sequel trilogy in the way it should have been made. We might get, like I said, an animated adaptation of the Thrawn trilogy. That would be great. I'd be all over that, dude. I would be all over, especially if Mark Hamill does voice like a badass Luke Skywalker. If they bring in Ian McDiarmid, like if they bring in the actual actors to voice them over, this could be phenomenal stuff, right? I would love that. And we have sort of 2 different branching canons. That would be great. But I just don't see that being the case because they've invested too much into it, and Disney's whole direction now is we don't care about the old fans. We want new fans now. We want new people. We want a new audience to watch us now. We don't care about the old guard because all they're going to do is complain anyways. That's the way that they've kind of marketed themselves, the way that they've kind of said these things about the Star Wars fandom. So I just don't think it's going to happen. Like, as much as I would be very surprised pleasantly by it, I don't think it's going to happen. See what I'm saying? If I'm being realistic, it's just not going to happen. They'll move forward with different storylines, but I don't see them actually going so far as to make a statement saying we are now officially decanonizing 7, 8, and 9, and we apologize for screwing up the sequel saga. I just don't see them doing that. They're going to keep promoting this saga forever because they realize that people in time will eventually see this as being the 9-part saga. Even though a lot of us that are older school probably never will see it that way and we'll just latch on to our movies that we like, a lot of the younger fans who will make up the future of Disney Star Wars will. I hope that I'm wrong about that. I really do, and I hope that they do consider maybe doing 2 different timelines after Episode 6. I would love that, but I just don't see them decanonizing Episode 7, 8, and 9. I can't. It would require an awful lot of backtracking. So, anyways, I will, without question, be following up on this story because it's quite a big one, and I really hope that this is not just a BS story because I just don't think it's true. And again, I'm not saying that Doomcock is lying. I'm saying that if there are ripple effects in Disney, I don't think it's as serious as people think it is. And I don't think it's going to lead to any actual change with the exception of them kind of plotting out future movies and storylines better. That's all I can think of going forward. So at the end of the day, the problem, a lot of it does lie in Disney. A lot of it does lie in what they wanted to do. Are we ever going to see the Lucas version of Episode 7, 8, and 9 done? Possibly, but it's doubtful. At least not without some major changes. We'll see. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching this damn near 20-minute long video. It means a lot to me. And those are my honest thoughts, man. You know I don't pull no punches. So we'll talk soon.